Namaste, I am Prful Ketkar. I am basically a student of international relations, but now most of the times deal in the media world. Presently, I am editor of Organizer Weekly, one of the oldest nationalist weeklies of Bharat. Today, we are going to discuss the topic Jammu Kashmir and China-Pakistan relations. Many people would wonder, whenever there is an issue of Jammu Kashmir, China comes in the picture. Though we are dealing with Pakistan, the real issue or the real fight in present day is with China. Why it is so important? Why China becomes a factor in India-Pakistan relationship vis-a-vis Jammu and Kashmir? What are those aspects that brought China in the picture? And how India is trying to understand and deal with the issue. These are some of the aspects we are going to discuss today. The relationship between China and Pakistan is very famously described as the deeper than the sea, sweeter than honey, and perhaps taller than Himalayas. What is the secret behind this relationship? Before going to this, we need to understand that the state of Jammu Kashmir, which is broadly divided in Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh region, has a very peculiar historical pattern of geographical divisions, claims and reclaims. But legally speaking, when Maharaja Hari Singh was ruling the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir till the independence and the official merger of Jammu Kashmir as per the legal provisions in the Union of India, entire state of Jammu Kashmir consisted of Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh, even parts of Gilgit-Baltistan and Hunza Valley, Aksai Chin up to Tibet. So all these people were actually paying tribute, annual tribute to Maharaja, and they were accepting his suzerainty. Now, suddenly, with the Pakistani infiltration after the partition, up to 27th October of 1947, this suddenly became an international issue and many international players became the part of it. Of course, that time Britain was part of it, the US became part of it, and eventually Russia and China also became part of it. But because China directly sharing borders on the eastern front, the things became more complicated and the Chinese strategic interests became more pertinent while dealing with the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. Generally, we talk about Kashmir. Most of the strategic experts you will see talking about Kashmir. What is the reality? The reality is the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which is more than 150,000 square kilometers, most of the territory that is occupied illegally by Pakistan is from Jammu and Ladakh region and Mirpur Muzaffarabad, which is Pakistan notoriously calls as the Azad Kashmir, which is actually a Gulam Kashmir, is only a part of it. So it is not issue of Kashmir Valley. It is an issue of entire Jammu Kashmir state, of which Jammu and Ladakh constitutes very important part, but in the narrative it is deliberately neglected, deliberately kept aside, and the Kashmir Valley became the center of discussion, not only in terms of narrative, but also in terms of defining policies. So this is one issue of discrimination. But another aspect which is generally and commonly neglected is, on the one hand, we call and discuss about POK, which is essentially Pak-occupied Jammu Kashmir, and not just Pak-occupied Kashmir. We forget about the most important part, that is COJK, that is Chinese-occupied Jammu Kashmir. What is Chinese-occupied Jammu Kashmir? Chinese-occupied Jammu Kashmir has two constituents. One is called as the Hunza Valley, and the other is called as the Aksai Chin. Aksai Chin is around 37,500 square kilometers, while Hunza Valley is around 5,800 square kilometers. Aksai Chin is the disputed area directly between India and China, and because of the British legacy where the borders on the eastern front are not defined, it is more or less a territorial issue with China. But Hunza Valley is strategically more complex issue simply because this is the region which Pakistan acceded to China. The region is of 5,800 square kilometer, and this has become the main bone of contention between India and China, because this is exactly the region, almost a part of Gilgit-Baltistan of interestingly, this is the territory which even Pakistan doesn't claim constitutionally. So Pakistan never claimed, United Nations never recognized, and still in 1963, with a bilateral agreement, Pakistan acceded this territory to China without the consent of India. So this is double illegal occupation, and this is the region where China is coming up with major infrastructural projects, and more importantly, this is the area where initially the idea of Karakoram Highway and now the idea of CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the 46 billion mega investment project, just a part of China's ambitious plan of reviving the so-called Silk Route is coming up. And all these together make China as an important player as far as the issue of Jammu Kashmir is concerned. Now, tactically and strategically, of course, China and Pakistan are always their friends. But what is the real contours of this relationship? The main part of this relationship is, of course, encircling India in the South Asian region. So the strategy is not limited to Pakistan. It is there in Sri Lanka. It is there with Bangladesh and Myanmar and Nepal, everywhere. But in terms of duration, right from the Cold War period, Pakistan has been a tested ally, or rather, China has been a tested superpower who's always sided with Pakistan. And the main reason behind this was that during the Cold War period, China felt that, especially post 1962, the Chinese state felt that India is the only emerging power that can challenge China in Asia. So, on the one hand, this policy of encirclement of India started, and Pakistan became a major ally. Pakistan's major issue is not Pakistan itself, The real issue is the ideology of Pakistan, the idea of Pakistan. Pakistan came into existence. Many people say, you know, it is a strategic war, it is a proxy war. No, it is, for Pakistan, it is an existential war. The idea of Pakistan came into existence with the basic notion that we are not part of Bharat. We are not part of larger Bharatiya civilization. Unless we understand this, and the only country that directly or indirectly supported this idea throughout last 72 years is perhaps China. And therefore, while understanding Pakistan-China relationship, we need to understand the internal dynamics of Pakistan and China. Pakistan has been unstable democracy. Army, ISI and the Islamic fundamentalists always played a key role in defining the policies. China always play this as a card. China always claims, last year only when I was there in China, and Doklam issue was going on, and we were having some dialogue with some of the Chinese think tanks and South Asia experts, India, Pakistan experts. And on the one hand, they were discussing Doklam, but every time they were saying that please try and understand, if we don't stand by Pakistan, who will control them? Who will guide them? Who will stabilize the system there? So, under the garb of stabilizing Pakistan, China is using the strategic position of Pakistan very effectively. As I said, on the one hand to encircle India, but more importantly to have direct access to the Indian Ocean region. And that's why this whole idea of connecting road right from Lhasa to Karachi, and from there the famous Gadar port that is coming up, that is the real strategic interest. And financially, Pakistan being in very difficult situation, it is always helpful for them to have this kind of understanding with China. On the one hand, giving access to China, on the other hand, ensuring their hold and their influence and interference and proxy war in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Because we are focusing on Jammu Kashmir, I will limit my discussion to that region. But ultimately, we need to understand the larger game, and perhaps when I'll come to the CPEC and the this Road and Belt initiative by China, we can discuss the issue in detail. But where the interest, this congruence of interest, for example, there is a problem of Islamic fundamentalism in China as well. And the Xinjiang region, the Uyghur fundamentalists, or what they called as the Eastern Turkmenistan, that issue is there, and perhaps the only official terrorist attack that has taken place in China was by Islamic fundamentalists. So obviously the question comes up, what is the reason that China supports the epicenter of terrorism, what is popularly called Pakistan? The prime reason is perhaps China believes that they are the one who can control militancy in their territory through Pakistan. Because Uyghurs are mainly approaching, and they are active through Central Asia, and therefore China needs Pakistan to deal with these Islamic fundamentalists and perhaps to play a certain role in the Islamic world, in the organization of Islamic countries, to influence the Uyghur movement. Thirdly, China is essentially non-democratic. So, for China also, the democratic India is a kind of ideological enemy. So, here a very strange combination of communist dictatorship and Islamic fundamentalist based ISI army ruled Pakistan, they come together against Bharat. This whole plan and this whole game has evolved over a period of time. Of course, there have been ups and downs, but the impact on Jammu Kashmir remained the same, that China again and again ensured Pakistan that in case of some kind of bilateral conflict, China would stand by Pakistan. On the other hand, China is giving commitment to India that officially China has recognized that this is a bilateral issue. But at the same time, China is giving assurance to Pakistan again and again that in case of conflict situation, China would be there as a big brother to help out Pakistan. And the latest case of terrorist, recognized terrorist by international organizations and the United States, and still they are not used against Pakistan to term Pakistan as a terror perpetrating state, simply because China stood by Pakistan. China used the veto power. So, you see, right from the days of late 1940s, when India and Pakistan had the first war after illegal infiltration from Pakistani side, then of 1960s, when again Jammu Kashmir was the center or focal point, and we had a full-fledged war against Pakistan. Then on the issue of the entire Bangladesh liberation movement, and again a two-front war, every time we see China playing an important role and sided with Pakistan. Kargil conflict was perhaps the only exception where China could not openly come out, and perhaps US played a key role and conveyed a clear-cut message to confine the conflict to a very limited region. So, it shows that if India decides and use the strategic power, willpower, diplomatic skills, then post Pokhran, if we could do in Kargil, we can do it again. Though there are blackmailing tactics by Pakistan that both are nuclear power, so it can go out of hand. The reality is, it is more about the strong-willed diplomacy, how to deal with these two neighbors, erring neighbors, who are having different strategic interests, but somewhere they are colluding against a common enemy called democratic India. China and India have a very strong economic relationship. The dependence and the kind of trade we have is enormous. China day to day is becoming a very capital incentive country, and the state controlled capitalism has become a hallmark of China. So, China would not like to somewhere destroy or destabilize this bilateral relationship on the trade and economic front. Of course, China needs access through the Indian Ocean and for the maritime route and access to Africa and Europe. It is very important for them to have this connectivity, and therefore, but again and again we need to remind that it is going through a sovereign part of Bharat, that is the state of Jammu Kashmir, the territory which is illegally occupied by Pakistan. Now, the basic legal point here is Pakistan has acceded the territory to China, which was illegally occupied. While granting the project and the funding support, Indian consent was not asked for, and therefore, in the larger game, if this whole idea of CPEC and this whole idea of having this grand connectivity project, the sovereignty aspect has to be kept in mind. So, once we accept that this is the question of India's sovereignty, then we have to deal with this relationship. And perhaps one of the best ways to deal with this relationship is to first to understand that this issue of Jammu Kashmir is not related to just Kashmir Valley. The issue of Jammu Kashmir is related to the illegally occupied territory of Jammu Kashmir. The issue of Jammu Kashmir is legally was a settled issue as far as the accession part is concerned. What was done in 1948 as per the UN resolution is the clear cut, which even China has recognized. In the United Nations resolution, China has supported the resolution which said that Pakistan will have to withdraw from the occupied territories. Then India can retain the armed forces to manage the territory, and then the third clause came about to take the consent or plebiscite of the people. The first two clauses were never discussed, never recognized, and only the third part is discussed. In fact, that also fulfilled by Bharat right in 1952-53 when the formal assembly came into existence and assembly ratified the accession treaty. Now the legal basis is very sound, where we need to understand the dynamics of Jammu Kashmir in the larger international context is the political narrative part of it and the strategy part of it. And in this strategy part, perhaps the nexus, earlier this nexus was much bigger, now it is limited to mainly Pakistan and China, and therefore perhaps we have to accept that Islamic fundamentalism is not the sole issue. Perhaps Chinese Communist state does not understand the repercussions of the ideology of religious fundamentalism and the basic motivation behind the terror acts supported by Pakistan. So we will have to educate Chinese scholars, Chinese experts, even the Chinese youth about the danger of Islamic fundamentalism and Islamic terrorism that Pakistan is actually not just supporting but perpetrating, not just in India but all over the world, and eventually China also can be victim of it. Secondly, there is a wider perception in Pakistan that especially with this $46 billion mega investment in Pakistan through CPEC, especially in the areas of Sindh, in the areas of Balochistan, there is a wider perception that eventually Pakistan is indirectly neo-colonized by China, and therefore there are frequent attacks on Chinese soldiers. This has indirect impact on Jammu Kashmir. The way China is playing China is openly has started saying that once the issue is settled, we are ready to discuss with India also. So in a way, it is a acceptance that this is a bilateral issue. We need to leverage this. We need to use this strategically, that China has a lot of at stakes when it comes to CPEC. But unless we understand the geostrategic importance of this entire region and the Chinese strategy to keep Gilgit-Baltistan out of the entire discourse of Jammu Kashmir, we cannot deal with either Jammu Kashmir effectively or the problem of dealing with two troubling neighbors. So the best way to go about it is first to have a larger understanding of the issue, understand the geography, understand the culture, understand the historicity, the legality of the region, and why and how these two neighbors from eastern and western front are actually trying to use this strategically important state, which has been a cultural crown of Bharat, for their own strategic interest. Please try and understand, our ignorance is their strength. Our lack of understanding about the larger issue of Jammu and Kashmir is being effectively used by Pakistan and China collaboratively. So many a times it is more about not just misinformation in the valley of Kashmir, but it is more about lack of information in the rest of India. So we just try to bridge this gap through this particular module and try to get the larger picture of Pakistan and China relationship and its impact on the larger issue of Jammu Kashmir. Eventually, how it is impinging on the India-China relationship and how India and China are trying to deal or find a solution to this, not actually a border dispute, because as far as the Aksai Chin is concerned, it is more a boundary dispute. It is not the issue of illegality is with Hunza. Hunza Valley is part of Gilgit-Baltistan. Why Gilgit-Baltistan is deliberately kept out of the entire discourse of Jammu Kashmir, and why China has successfully done that, how this has been impacting on India-China relations vis-a-vis Jammu Kashmir, and what is the larger game that China is trying to play through the whole road and belt initiative that we will discuss but sometime later. Thank you.